Thank you for staying with Daybreak. The young people here, we're speaking about youth and politics on matters, governance and everything in between there. We're getting their views on how they want to be governed, what their issues are, what their priority areas are, and we're speaking about politics as well as affordable housing, the road to Singapore, all that. Our guests are here. Mark Ouko is a youth coordinator, National Students Council. Thank you for making time. Kimberly Marion is a youth and gender inclusion advocate. Thank you for making time. Beatrice Amondi is a youth advocate. Thank you for making time. Jimmy Mutua is a convener, male gender champion. Thank you for making time. And Kipkorir Brian is now joining us. He's a UDA National Youth Affairs leader. Thank you very much for coming in. Now, there's something that has come up here, Kimberly, and we were talking about the political arithmetic here. You mentioned the issues that are of concern to you, that you feel have not been addressed: unemployment, cost of living, and leadership mistrust. But now there's this conversation around political planning, where political parties are meeting to plan on how to get 2027 power. And the most recent one was aspirants, more than 12,353 of them meeting at State House. Do you feel included in this political arithmetic as a young person?
Nice. Thank you for that question, Trevor. Before I answer that question specifically, I'd like to pose a question to both Beatrice and my colleague over here. They mentioned something on Nyota Fund, saying how Nyota Fund is helping the young people and the youth. But now, Trevor, a loan of 22,000 to a young person, maybe say a youth is an age bracket up to 35, living an informal settlement. Do you really think this person is taking that loan to actually start business? How sustainable are these loans that they are taking? If this Let me say, if these people who are economically challenged taking this loan, if the cost of living is still very high, it means that they are taking this loan to manage their day-to-day expenses. So I'd pose the question to them, how sustainable is this loan? And now I'd go to the question that you asked about inclusion of youth in the political spaces. I would say, Trevor, that if you asked me this question, say 2 years ago, the answer will be different. But right now we are in a position where a lot of youths are very awoke. They are very aware of their civic rights, and they are very ready to join the political parties. Now the question still remains, will youth just be a campaign narrative, or will the youth actually be part and parcel of the political parties? Because you find that in various political parties, I'm assuming most of the individuals here and even the youths out there are in political parties, but it becomes to a point that it's just titles. Just because we are saying we need more youths, for youth inclusion, it's just for youth inclusion. Majority of the time you find that youth are usually used as a political campaign narrative. You'd find that since we are heading to the political period, these party leaders will start calling the youth, so that you can feel included. But what happens, and this has been history repeating itself, what happens after election? Where are the voices of the youth after election? Why are the youth still being told, you guys are the leaders of tomorrow? But during elections, at the time that they're actually looking for us. So I'd say, however much we want to join these political spaces, these political parties actually need now to sit down with the youths, actually put the youths in their system. Because how many parties can we say have SGs as the young people? How many parties have the treasuries as the young people? It's very few in Kenya, yeah? So I'd say that right now I feel like they're using the youth as a political campaign tool, yeah. But I'm expecting to maybe see a shift and a change in youth, because a lot of us are seeking accountability and seeking to get into those spaces. Yeah. So I'm calling even upon the youth who are in the various political spaces to actually get a seat at the table, yeah. Not just be part of just because I'm a youth, I'm here. Okay, yeah. So I always ask young people that question because there's a disconnect between being politically active and the actions that they're taking. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. The IEBC has been trying to do registration of voters. Up to date, it's been only 200,000 who've registered. They're looking at 6 million who have IDs and have not registered. They're starting the mass registry of voter registration, of course, in March. But still, where are the young people? How come the 6 million target is not being reached? How do you participate politically if you're not even registered? That's a very interesting question, and I do get that question a lot, especially being a young person and a youth advocate. First of all, what I say is, and I'd look, where's my camera? I want to look at the youths.
Right here.
And call to the youths, chukua kura. Tunaingia msimu wa siasa, we're going to the political season, chukua kura. I usually advise the youth to take their voters.
But are they?
The thing is, Trevor, I won't say where are the youths. The youths are everywhere. We are here, we are at school, we are at work. What is the IEBC doing to ensure that they are actually reaching these youths? Because tell me in the sense that we are fighting poverty. Let me say that. We're trying to fight poverty and economical issues. I don't even know where my polling station is, not my polling station, the place where I'm supposed to register. I come from Juja, because I near around that place. You find that in Juja, the place where I'm actually the place where I went to register as a voter was very hidden. We had to do social media challenges and TikTok challenges to actually tell the youths where these places are. So are these places actually very open to the people? How accessible are they to the young people? And apart from matters access, how is the IEBC trying to actually reach young people in the sense that the mass voting, the mass registration is coming up on March, right? Will IEBC now move door to door like they did when I was young? Because we need to meet the young people where they are, in the sense that if they are in school, majority of them, I'm assuming they're in higher learning institution, why not do a drive there? Why can't the IEBC actually say, we know most of the young people are here, let's go and meet them to where they are. Let's not keep on complaining, saying where the young people, yet you find that this registration center are actually very far from people. I need to have fare, maybe let's say 200, 300. As a young person, that 200, 300 is enough to sustain me for the whole day. So the question is, will I go to the will I go to this registration center to actually register, or will I say, acha nikae na hii 200 leo, nikule? You find that even in the mashinani areas, these places are not close to people. These people have to walk a very long distance, and sometimes it gets really tiresome, Trevor. Because you're imagining you're supposed to do maybe you're supposed to get your daily bread for the day. You're supposed to maybe save for the women. I'm also talking on behalf of the women. You're supposed to do care works maybe at home and all that. So what time do you have to actually walk, say 2 kilometers to actually register? So me, I'd call upon the IEBC personnel to actually say digitalize. I heard they were digitalizing it. So let's digitalize the registration. Let's bring the registration center closer to the people.
Okay.
Yes, right, so that's what I'd say.
Let me bring in Beatrice here. Beatrice, is there a disconnect between the youth desires and their youth action?
Absolutely, there is. And it's really interesting to hear Kimberly make the very wonderful comments. Trevor, speaking as a youth, our main problem is entitlement. We do not want to roll up our sleeves, but we want deliverables. I want to speak to a place where I belong to. I am an active member of the party UDA, and as a youth, I am the vice chairperson of the Great County of Kisumu under UDA, and also still under UDA, I'm an aspiring woman representative for the Great County of Kisumu. So if I hear Kimberly say that we are not given spaces and we are not given opportunities and we are used as bait, I think she's underwhelmed with the party that she belongs to. From where I am belonging to, there's space and there are opportunities for us. That is why I'm also in that particular party. I'd also like, before I make a comment on your statement, I'd also like to point out a correction to Kimberly that the Nyota program is not a loan to young people. It is a grant by the government of Kenya. So nobody is expected to pay back the money. Let's get that straight. How sustainable is the Nyota program? I said the entire tapestry, Trevor, of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda is embedded on value chain. It's a long-term program. We cannot only focus on what we are looking at here. For a long time, we've had the politics of ignition and extinction. This particular regime is beginning this, and when we get the next regime, we get an entirely new programs. What is the problem with continuing with what is working? Affordable housing program is working, Trevor. If I hear the opposition say that they are going to stop the affordable housing program, what then happens to the 500,000 youths who are working in these particular sites? If somebody is saying that the Nyota program is not working, what happens to a youth in my county, Kisumu County, from Siaya, from Migori, who are in these respective counties and are beneficiaries of Nyota program and are investing this grant in their businesses? We've had stories, we have testimonials from youths, how this program is really beneficial to them. If you ask me, there's a huge dissonance between what the youths are saying and what they really want. So I think it's about time we roll up our sleeves. The government is doing something to the youth. There's work in progress. The problem is that we are looking at Kenya as a destination, as youths, yet Kenya is a work in process. We also have to appreciate what the president is doing and the work that is going on. We want results, let us roll up our sleeves. Let us not be entitled in everything that we are looking at, yet not appreciating the work that is going on, Trevor.
Okay, let me bring in Mark on this. Mark, is that true? Because you and I have had this discussion several times, the disconnect between what the youth want and the action that they take. And Beatrice is now saying that the youth are too entitled and they don't want to roll up their sleeves. I've met quite a number of people who say that the opportunities don't exist and nobody gives you, the opportunities are not equally available. But if you ask them whether they've actually applied, they say they haven't. So how then do you know that it's not available if you haven't really applied? Is it true that there's a disconnect between what the youth want and their action? Or is it that opportunities are stifled deliberately and skewed towards a certain particular team?
Well, you know, in the sense of, in the broad term of use, youth is quite a very, very large term to use in that sense. But I think I do agree that there is quite a huge disconnect. And the cause of this huge disconnect is something called organization. Yeah? It can come in the sense of political organization. Now, for example, referring back to what your earlier question around the political activities that are currently going in terms of, you know, parties alignment, you know, pre-election pacts, etc., etc. We see that most youths are passively involving themselves in terms of, you know, what is politically going on, while a minority of them are actively engaging in what is going on. As Beatrice, I'm a member of the UDA party, and for a very long time I've always reiterated, and that in fact when I was coming in, somebody was telling me of how I've been saying that an organized minority will always defeat a disorganized majority. And let us go even to the facts. Today as we speak, the UDA party has 12,000 aspirants who have signed that they want to vie under the UDA party. The last election, there was a total of 16,000 aspirants in the general election 2022. UDA is 4,000 shy of achieving that number. And that is the general election, total number of people, not distinct of parties. And we are 1 year into the election, meaning that we could even get to over 20,000 people applying as aspirants under the UDA party. It goes to show the level of organization that we have as the UDA party. As the UDA party, we are organized so much that we even have a youth wing, and I think my colleague Brian is one of the people who head that group. We have a wing for the UDA. Even if you looked at surface look at it, at the people who were at State House the other day, Beatrice will tell you a number of the people who were there were young people. Young people actually believe in the UDA party, and they believe in it not even if you were to put all other factors constant. It is because of the level of organization that the President Ruto has demonstrated. And even if we look at the activities that President Ruto has been doing the last 1 year or even the last 1 month, Trevor, President Ruto is meeting over 10,000 people of 4 times almost in a week. All this, the rest of these presidential candidates are just meeting each other in hotel rooms, in conferences, you know, discussing, who should be party leader, who should be secretary general. On our side, we are very clear who is the presidential candidate. We are very clear on whom we are going to do coalition pact. And I've always told people, elections are not won on the day of the election. No, elections are won before that. And the elections can be predetermined by the level of organization that you put. And that's why I think the young people are very confident with the UDA, but simply because of the political organization that, you know, President Ruto has demonstrated.
Okay, Jimmy?
Let me begin by refuting what Mark is saying, because I hear him trying to sell the Huda card.
Yeah.
But here is the thing, Trevor. From where I sit, I'm a convener of male gender champion. under the umbrella of Center for Multi-Party Democracy. And I can tell you for a fact that I have been involved in a lot of spaces for the last 3 years, and some of these cross-party conversations, we have HUDA, we have ODM, we have Wiper, KANU, Jubilee. In fact, you can refer to your Veronica Mahina, who is a senator from your party, or rather as well, Bedi Siengo. We have been in forums, and we have had these conversations about youth representation, women representation. And I can say this for a fact that there are very many underlying challenges when it comes to youth representation. And it's not just youth representation, we're talking about SIGs, special interest groups, because there's what we call a political party fund. And in that political party fund, we do have a funding for youth. Let me ask them, when did they have a meeting and the UDA party gave you, actually, this is your youth fund, because it is there in the constitution. So I'm saying this, let's stop first playing this card of my party, because it's going to shield us from really seeing the real problem where it is. Because when it comes to youth representation, issues of women, youth, PWDs, they are underrepresented. Even as we have in this conversation right now, we have a legitimate parliament, because the affirmative action, Katiba 2010, has never been met. So how can we dare sit here and have a conversation that youth are being represented? How many youth do we have in parliament? How many youth do we have in Senate? How many youth do we have as MCAs? And how do we have representation of youth in the Senate if the political parties are not going to front candidates in terms of youth and the women and the PWDs? That's why we should have conversation. It is not just about belonging to the party. It is not just about having massive following of the youths. It is about youth inclusivity. Youths having voices. You can't have a voice if you're not seated on the table. Let's have a conversation about how many youths are seated in the parliament. Yeah? And it is the political parties that field candidates. So this is where the conversation should start. How many youths are going to be fronted in the next election in terms of in elective position, whether it is Senate, whether it is Parliament, because the demographics are very clear. When you look into the youth representation, youth are the majority in this country. We also have a very large number, maybe second is women in terms of representation, in terms of the numbers. So how comes we do not have the same reflecting in parliament? We should have more youths, because youths are being educated. They are not being educated so that they can become plumbers and so on. They have brains, they need to contribute, they have skills. So we need to have youth making decisions. That's why I saw in parliament someone, an old member of parliament, who was suggesting we should do away with the TikTok. Where are we headed as a nation? We are headed toward the digital space. We need to embrace technology. So we really must have representation in terms of the youth in the parliament, the women in the parliament. Even when you look at what we were trying to demonstrate against the bill 2024, it is because of some of these clauses. You look at them and you are like, who was speaking for this? Don't these people have daughters and sons and so on? So it is an issue of inclusivity, not just from behind, but front, because we must have youths who are speaking, all their voices are being counted as we make policies. And I have seen some of the political parties that are trying to bring about change in terms of how many youths are in the National Executive Council. Because if you are not seated there, that's where the decisions are being made. So as we are passing on this NDC, how many youths are in forefront? So there has to be a deliberate decision and a deliberate conversation to have a true and honest conversation. Let's not just try to shoot our political parties, because they are part of the problem. And the political parties, they are our political homes. But homes can be renovated. We need to renovate, because if you are in a house and it has a leaking roof, then it is your responsibility to make sure that you deal with that problem. Okay. And if you're not able to do by yourself, you can call other members. And then if the home is not changing, then you can shift. Let's be honest and realistic. When you're talking about, he's talking about the president meeting all these other youths. It is because he's using the state machinery. We are seeing them going with the choppers. We do not have access to this kind of funding they have. And it is a national money. It is not just individual money. When we are seeing UDA meeting at State House, that is not even constitutional, because they are supposed to meet at their party headquarters or wherever else. But that is a national monument. It is a national institution. So we really need to be really honest about youth representation, about women representation, and we need to speak as youths. Okay. Because now if we should ODM, Wiper, KANU, and the youths are not being represented, we are just actively there doing things, but when we come to the and I'm not saying there is no single youth in leadership, but I am saying, are the numbers reflecting? And that's why we are seeing a lot of disparities. Okay. Now, if you're not giving the women their funding, which is constitutional, if you're not giving the youth their funding, which is constitutional, how do you expect them even to have monies? Probably the Wazirs may have monies to go around doing stuff. Some of these youths, they are not employed. Okay. And so if you're coming from a longer distance to where the police stations are, where whatever IEBC offices are, you may not even you may have that as a challenge to be there so that you can be able to be registered. So we are saying there are a lot of disparities, but then the political parties are partly to blame because they are not really doing what they are supposed to do. Give youths their funds. Okay. Because that's where the conversation begins.
All right, let me bring in Brian into this and talk about the inclusivity and the leadership gaps that you see before we transition into the road to Singapore. I'd like to hear from all of you what that looks like in your own description. But Brian, before you walked in, you were talking about political inclusion of the young people. Are you seeing gaps there, or are we on the right trajectory?
This conversation we have always had on the issues to do with how the youths are being represented and whether if they're very inclusive when it comes to being in the either political parties, in the parliament, the Senate, and any other offices that we have in our country. And I want to answer to my friend Jimmy here when he speaks about the issue to do with the youth funding in political parties. Remember, in any political party, when the money comes from ORPP, they usually go direct to the account or the holder signatory of the account of the party. And it's until when the youth serve program is when the money should be released. There's no point where the political party can just give the percentage to the youth to say that you can run your program independently. But because of that issue, we have to understand that we have to align the goals of the party and the activity that the youth want to conduct and the posterity aspect of the party to ensure that whatever that we are doing is much well conversant itself on how it can achieve its level of understanding, but also promote the party, but also promote the youth engagement in a way that also will help you to understand exactly what the party is intending and how if the party is the ruling party of the day, they must ensure also they align with the activities that also promote the whole ensurety of the inclusion of the youth. Again, when it comes to that, in all political parties at this point, what I've seen and what I understand most of the time is the youths are doing the best. If you look even for a small party like a Kano, the youth are doing the best. They're always included every time they're in the neck. When you come to our party, when you see Sister here and Mark here, they are part and parcel of the youth inclusion that we have in the party, and they run the activity of the party. When you come even to the party of ours, you'll see the treasury for our party is still a youthful person. When you see the neck members, over 5 members are still the youth. But when the number of the youth are very large, that it doesn't reflect on the leadership that my brother is saying, the question is this: are the youth coming forward for those positions? Because there's no point where the political party or the leadership of the party, they will come down there and tell you, my brother, my sister, there is this position that you have to go for it. But it's upon the youths to come forward and vie for this position. Because even when the president was speaking the other time in the status on the 4th of Wednesday of this month, one of the things that he mentioned was, if for the young people to occupy these spaces, for the moment, we have grassroots election at the polling centers, and we have 4 positions for the youthful people. What are the youth doing on this situation? Are they applying for this post? Even at the point that president have to waive for the application fee of these grassroots positions. So we expect the more and more youths to apply for this position, and for that virtue, when it comes to the National Delegate Conference, we can now strike our whip and say, for this time, we want to elect our deputy president. We want to elect our second party leader. We want to elect our SG. And for all that to happen, the young people must be part and parcel of these processes and actively participate, and to know by knowing but getting information of what is right. So we need also to empower ourselves intellectually to understand what is going on at the moment. But again, for the political education, where do we get it? We get it from the history of our country. What has been happening? And what exactly is hailing our country if the young people are not participating in politics? So we must also question ourselves and see what is counterintuitive, what is not common for us. And we also have to seek that in the leveraging of ourselves to become in these political spaces. So for the inclusivity, the political parties are doing much. It's upon now the young people to be intentional and deliberate when it comes to these issues. Because I feel so bad when I see the young people don't want to participate in this issue. But I will not say the youth are entitled. What I will say is perhaps the way you should handle things for them have changed. maybe the norm must be disrupted so that we may have the new innovative way and creative way of engaging youths. For instance, for the Ministry of Interior, the other day was proclaiming that they are going to register as for ID through mobile registration, no more for filling the forms of the paper. So it's a zero paper way. So I think IBC also should adapt on that, because we must revisionalize the way we are doing our things, because sometimes we may think the young people don't want to participate in these things, but again they are seeing the benefit end of it, because at the end of the day, what you are doing to achieve on something that you intended to do, you must see the end of the benefit for that. So my point is this, very simple. For the inclusivity to come to this point that we really desire, we must also ensure that the young people must come on table, and if they don't come, the answer is very sure. The number of the young people in representation will always be low. But remember, these leaders that are old, also they have youths in their house. And perhaps, maybe they represent their youths, which they are their kids. So that's the thing that is there.
Okay, so we've talked about political inclusivity, affordable housing. Now let's talk about the road to Singapore. And I'll start with you, Kimberly. What does that look like for you? It's been a conversation that is being had by the political elite and different people. But as a young person, what does that look like for you? And do you even buy that dream to begin with?
That's a very interesting topic, and it's been everywhere of late. So for me, I'd say, when I hear people talk about the road to Singapore, what I get is, say, how to, according to my understanding, is stronger institutions, policy discipline, leadership accountability. To me, Singapore doesn't represent us copy-pasting a country. It represents zero tolerance to corruption, that, like I said, stronger institution, and heavy investment in human capital. Like I said earlier, Trevor, no country develops fully without utilizing its human capital. If the youth, the young people, and the women in this country remain economically and politically marginalized, then the road to this said development will still remain very much incomplete. You find that Kenya has the potential, I'd say. Like I said earlier, Kenya is a growing economy. So it means that it has a lot of potential, but potential alone is not progress. You find that progress depends on the political will of the people. We can't be in charge. We can't still be having just 1% of the elite population being the majority of the ones running the economy in Kenya. We can't have 99% living below poverty lines in Kenya. I'm just giving rough figures. Until we are able to solve such issues, until we are able to able to not politicize institution, not work on partisans, but actually work on objectives, then maybe we'll get there. So to me, I'd say the real question is not whether Kenya can become Singapore, but whether Kenya can actually build systems that will work consistently with its people, in the sense that the road to development, to me, is not about imitating another country. Very far from it. It's about actually building systems that work for the people, with the people, and work even beyond the government of today. Policies that work beyond, like he had mentioned earlier, I don't know, I think it's Beatrice that had mentioned earlier, policies that work beyond the sitting government, policies that actually, why are we talking about Thika Road? It's still there today, because this is something that was very sustainable, built, and was not disrupted. Until we actually be able to build systems like that, I will say the road to Singapore is still a very dusty one.
Okay, Beatrice, interesting analysis. What does the road to Singapore look like to you? What should we do now? And what do you understand it to be as a young person?
To the tune that Kimberly has said, I think majority of it couldn't be further from the truth. It's also quite misleading, Trevor, so to say. What I agree with is the fact that we are speaking long term. And the road to Singapore is a metaphor. We are not simply copy-pasting Singapore and implementing in Kenya. I think the baseline where we agree with Singapore is the affordable housing plan. Do we have people employed? Yes. 100,000 teachers employed? Yes. 500,000 of youths working in the construction site? Yes. Do we have the internet jobs? Yes, Trevor. That is work in progress. Work is still continuing. So what does the president mean when we are speaking of Singapore? Has he managed to subsidize production? Yes. Previously, we were buying unga at 230, now it's 170 to 130 probably. That's a significance of between 60 to 100 shillings, Trevor. What the president means when he's speaking about Singapore is that now we need to progress further. The entire thing is about long term. In Kenya, we are importing about 500 million of food products. But then we have the arid and the semi-arid areas, which are untapped. We've been speaking about dams for a very long time. We are good at formulation, implementation is the problem. And here we have a president who is so focused on implementation, which has also made him so unpopular. And it's still a good thing. We'll see the ripple effect in the long run, Trevor. So if you're speaking about Singapore, we are speaking about developing the agricultural sector. We have untapped area. We are looking at ways in which we can tap these potential areas, the semi-arid and the arid area. It is really possible in the long run, probably 7 to 10 years, we'll see the effect. If we are able to invest more in the agricultural sector, then we'll be able to even export more as a country. So we are looking at it in the long term. We've heard the president speaking about the potential in the technology sector. He had some dealing with the US, and we were not able to implement that because we are low on electricity. We are not able to supply the data that was supposed to be created here, something to that degree. So what is he also speaking about when he's speaking about Singapore? We need to invest in the energy sector. We need more electricity in our country because we are not able to be a manufacturing country when the electricity bills are so high. Nobody would want to invest in such a country. We need to subsidize that. Our neighbor Ethiopia here is doing proper in that area, so we are trying to adjust to what they're doing. That is why the president is also so focused on the construction of these dams. So if you're speaking about Singapore, we are speaking about what is workable, the potential that we have that is untapped, and the entire thing is not about President William Ruto. He will come and go. But Kenya needs to progress. We need to get somewhere. That is why, Trevor, we are saying that we do not want the politics of on and off, that something has started, it is working, the next regime comes in, wants to do away with it, yet it is working. If you are speaking about Singapore, we are speaking about long term. Okay. We are speaking about something beyond President William Ruto's tenure. What happens in the next 20 years? He'll not be here. Are we still going to import about 500,000 of food into our country? What happens again in Kenya when he is not here? Are we still going to speak about bad roads, poor roads in our areas? Okay.
Let me bring in Mark. Mark, what does the road to Singapore mean to you as a young person? Yeah. How do you understand this?
Yeah, Trevor, before I indulge around this Singapore issue, you'll kindly allow me to respond to my brother Jim, because he has mentioned me quite a bit. And I'll just respond to him in a second or so. Trevor, the political lines will be drawn very soon. And if not very soon, they have already started to be drawn. This constant generic and vague analysis of telling youths, oh, youth inclusivity, this and that, when you're not being very specific, is what is keeping youths disorganized. If you're Jimmy, be more specific. When you talk about youth inclusivity, I speak ardently about UDA party because I see it as a space where youths have been given a space to be inclusively involved. I speak about the UDA party because of the level of organization that is there, Trevor. I speak about the UDA party because I believe in its principles and the steps in which the president is taking towards the 2027 election. I want to tell my brother Jim, if you believe into the idea that UDA party is not doing one or two so, then give youths an alternative to that. You do not speak about, oh, youth inclusivity, this and that, then you keep your colleagues in a space of amorphousness and confusion till they do not know where this generic analysis would lead them to. So the battle lines will be drawn soon, and everybody will now need to pick a side. And some of us have picked a side very early on because of the level of organization that President Ruto has demonstrated, and will support him to the very end till 2027. Now, back to your question. You know, Trevor, from where I come from, even some of my people believe that we are supposed to be going to Canaan, and Singapore is just a place that we are passing through. Now, the whole idea about Singapore, it is an economic blueprint, and metaphorically, actually represents where Kenya needs to be in terms of economy. Now, if you look at what the president of Singapore, Lee Kuan, did in the early 1960s, and if you see that dynamical change in terms of their economies to the 1970s and 1980s, there's one fundamental thing that Singapore particularly did, and this was human capital development, and I think she had talked about a bit about it, and I think this is reflective into what President Ruto is particularly on how do we maximize the utility of our human capital. And that's why when you see programs such as Nyota program, there is a long-term effect into it, that we are not just giving young people 22,000. For her, she may just see it as 22,000. Of course, the cash effect of it is that this 50,000 at some point, you know, it will degenerate or something of the sort. But they're not just giving 50,000. There are two phases into it. First of all, there is a 2-day program. You're taught about how you're supposed to use the money, and even if you look at it, and I'd given you the numbers last time, the net effect of it is that today we are going to open over 50,000 micro enterprises across the country. And what President Ruto is doing is that how can we build the human capital in this country, as we look into solving the unemployment gap in this country. And when we talk about the whole idea of Singapore, some people think that you are using it as a political ploy towards winning 2027. No, this is not wrong. And President Ruto has been discussing about this idea for a very long time. And all what President Ruto has been speaking into is that how do we change the systems first of all? And I think this is what President Ruto imminently did when he came into power. He said, let's first of all change the systems. When we come to and the system should be designed for the common mwananchi, bottom up. When we talk about the health system, we change from NHIF to SHA. SHA that will be enable any person who comes from the who is economically deprived will be able to access health. The funding system in the education, he was able to change them. The number of youth programs that are able to talk about the climate works, the housing program, the Kandarasi program, etc., etc. Yeah. So I think we are on the right trajectory, and let us keep supporting the president on this path.
Jimmy, what does the road to Singapore look like to you as a young person?
Trevor, everybody's talking about what it is being done to really get us to Singapore, but then nobody's looking at the flip side of how did Singapore get to where it is, because it is not just it is Ali Mazrui who say you dig deep or touch not the western spray, because we seem to be borrowing just the one glorious part of how did they get there, because before you get there was punishing corruption. You have seen the conversation about 11 billion being lost in SHA. We are not seeing anyone being accountable for that. And if you look at the whole aspect of the leadership that takes us there, it is not the leadership that you go to other communities and you start using leaders. And we're talking about a manner of a man who is a president, who is supposed to unify the country. How do you get us as a country to this space we are calling Singapore, abusing partly leaders who are believed by the communities? And when you're calling people wapumbafu, stupid and all that kind of nonsense, how do you get us into this space of Singapore? It has to be deliberate, not just a say, not just a political slogan, because it seems most of this political class are trying to look into how do we just win the next election, instead of looking into how do we help the next generation to be where they are supposed to be. Look at Singapore. It has been across many decades and many years coming and going. There has been proper planning, the structuring and so on. There is inclusivity of everyone included in this space. So there has to be deliberate inclusion, and there has to be a deliberate work towards that by punishing corruption, because if we are still having money being looted in front of our very own eyes and there is no punishment, nobody is being accounted for that, then how do we get there? Because I believe that there is a lot of money that is being lost into corruption, and if we can be able really to really stop that, we will stop even this borrowing. Again, how we are dealing with the police. I expect in a state whereby someone has a problem with me, maybe the authority, you will come to me and identify yourself. I am police so and so, and I am, my badge number is this, and I've come to arrest you. But when you see policemen who are going to churches, and they are, it almost appears like it's a Rambo movie. There's a tear gas, there's a shooting, and these are just peaceful people who are really worshiping God in our church. How do we get ourselves into Singapore, in this place we are calling Singapore, while we are terrorizing citizens who are not terrorists, who are not stealing, they are merely just worshiping God in our church? How is it difficult for a police officer to come there and say, I want to speak to so and so, and you are being taken to really go record a statement because of this you said, or this you did? So there has to be deliberate empowering our institutions so that the institution can be workable. And we're talking about not by really using police and using the government mechanisms to really try to really victimize people who are opposed to your ideas. And in a very democratic space like Singapore, there has to be inclusion in terms of different ideologies, because if you're only going to agree with the people who are speaking your language, then that's not growth. If we really want to grow, we have really to interrogate even our own thoughts and the thinking and the patterns. We have to interrogate even our own ideas. How are we going to get in this space? To get in this space of development, to get in this space of representation, whereby everybody is comfortable and feels this is my space, is leadership in terms of development, economy, politics. There has to be, it has to be very democratic. Yeah. There has to be including other people's ideas. Okay. You also have to listen if you are not agreeing with your idea. Pay a minute attention and listen. Why is it that we are opposed to this or that? And let's have that dialogue. Then we can be able to build a better country. Okay. But I'm not looking forward to saying let's get to Singapore. Let's build the Kenya we want in our own way, using our own methodology, because some of these trajectories we are trying to apply cannot really work for Kenya, because again we're talking about Singapore is just a city state. Kenya is not a city state, so all the methodologies are very different, and how to get there might be very different. And that's why some of the times we keep on borrowing ideas that do not work, because those ideas were designed to work for other people. Yeah. But where are we as the Kenyan people, and how is our geography, how is our resources, what will get us to where these people got into? Okay. Because there has to be a deliberate looking into in terms of what resources we have, what revenue do we have, how can we get there? And again, it doesn't have to be like a very fast development, because again, development has to be gradual, because if you just want to use mechanism overnight to make this possible, remember these nations have been there for a very long time. Yeah. And they have come there gradually. It was not just one day you woke up and you found yourself every system was working. There has to be progression, and there has to be you have to build on other people's leadership. Because I've also seen that sometimes when we have one regime coming into office, another regime leaving, sometimes they start to kill what was built by the previous regime. Okay. Now, if you are building a school, someone else comes and they don't continue that school, they start a new one, and you don't want to continue with this project or this because someone else, it is someone else's legacy, that is killing development. And you cannot just build your own idea and you don't build on other people's ideas. Okay. There has to be continuity.
Level of continuity.
Yeah, so that you can get there.
Brian, what does the road to Singapore look like for you?
The road to Singapore is a national economic vision for Kenya, and that has been made clearly by our president and also for our deputy president. And for that instance, what we ask ourselves is, for this consistent of development to happen, what is the mechanism that is so fully adhered to its vision that it has announced on itself? So, and this is what it comes from the political parties. And we are changing this narrative to ensure that the political parties becoming a posterity tool by ensuring that they hold into that plan. And for that is like the manifesto that the party and the current regime uses is the book that uses itself for benchmark and also for checking listing, and to ensure that whatever that it does, it implement page by page, sentence by sentence, and comma by comma. And this is what the things that are happening for each and every time. And we are trying to do this through our political parties, and for instance for our UDA party through our president, is to ensure that whatever that come in place is by the consultation of the people and by the people, but ensuring that whatever that comes from that manifesto is intentional and deliberate on wherever they ask the people. That's why we usually have consultation. Even at the moment, when we are speaking about the issue to do with Singapore, if yesterday in Trans Nzoia could see CS Deborah Barasa who is doing consultation, the other time we've seen Mount Kenya people are doing consultation, and this to ensure that we keep this conversation to do with how we are going to transform Kenya. When we're having the 5 trillion budget for infrastructure development for this country, is something that we we ensure that we keep ensuring we innovate ways to ensure we have money, because we understand we have a debt and we have obligation to service that debt and to pay back. So what are other ways to ensure that we have fund for this Singapore, road to Singapore to become a realistic vision that we have in our Kenya country? And in the context that we are understanding this is that, whichever the case, we are going to develop this country in our way. But the metaphorical aspect of road to Singapore is to keep the vision steady and to ensure that whatever that we are doing is going to realize that vision, that we are going to empower each. For the poverty elevation, we understand the case study for China. It uses only 40 years to elevate 800 million people from the poverty line. And that is possible. Why not Kenya? Because in Kenya we have sun, we have wind power, we have water, we have land mass, we have people who are very empowered, we have creative youths. And why not for us? So it's higher time that this country must ensure it keeps steady itself on the issues that they need to achieve. And for that can be realized only through political parties. That's why we, for this time, and for the first time in this country, we're going to have the party that goes beyond post-2 regimes.
Okay.
And that is UDA. And for that reason, is to ensure we have the longevity on the plan that we want to achieve. And the road for Singapore will be possible.
All right. I have some quick feedback that I want to bring up, and then I'll give you just 30 seconds for closing remarks. We have just about 5 minutes to close. Let's bring up that feedback real quick and hear what you have to say. Kipiego Narapsie says the youth are disorganized and divided. They are the majority, but they lack unity. Some are sycophants for the political bigwigs. Year in, year out, youth have been told they are the leaders of tomorrow. That tomorrow is now. Youth, rise up and take up your space. Okay? Boniface Mwiti says, Trevor, looking at the Nyota program, what we need is an enabling environment. Counties could waive business permits for 2 to 3 years for youth businesses. Government could offer 5-year tax relief. Sadly, many UDA youth speak to defend government, not to address the real issues. Godfrey Baraza says President Ruto has perfected the art of baiting the youth with promises and carrot dangling them into action, then cashing in politically. As long as young people remain available for use, they'll stay his most reliable political stock. Kipiegon again says Singapore talk is another political rhetoric, same as the so-called bottom-up narrative. It's meant to deceive gullible voters. How can you talk about Singapore yet you can't fix corruption? DP Kindiki spends extravagantly on jets. Singapore dream. Bobo Wino says the problem with President William Ruto is that he's full of promises upon promises with no fruitful results. How can we go to Singapore with a broken system? In fact, we are heading to Singapore. Health, education, and the economy are not working for Kenyans. Sheila says it's high time the youth change tactics and strategy. They should avoid being ready and available for manipulation. Let them form their own parties, build networks among themselves, and show up for leadership through elective spaces. Okay, Kimberly, closing remarks, really brief.
Trevor, before I give my closing remarks, I'd just like to point out especially something on the affordable housing. The UDA party members have kept on mentioning affordable housing, but then they mentioned something that these youths that are there are being hired most of for manual labor, because they're mentioning plumbing, electricity, and whatnot. So my biggest question, and maybe I'd pose the question to everyone, we have people in institutions, higher learning institutions, beyond technical institutions. So are we say how sustainable is this affordable housing? And are we saying that each and every youth will actually now go and work in the affordable housing as plumbers, as electrician? Are we creating a system that does not absorb its graduates and just gives them the basic and the bare minimum opportunity, and they should just accept it? We're being called entitled for actually calling out for and speaking out for our rights. And on my closing remarks, I'd say I'd call upon the youths to actually organize. Someone has mentioned it there. Sheila has mentioned it. She has said that the youths need to actually take up spaces and not be too available. I'd call the youths to continue doing the civic engagement, whether it's through the social media, because it reaches the masses. Let nobody not tell you that social media doesn't reach. It does. Let's do civic engagement kwa ground. Let's do it in the social media. Let's do voter sensitization. Let's change the voter ideologies to beyond personalized politics to actually ideological politics. So I'd say organize.
Okay, Beatrice, closing remarks.
Thank you, Trevor. I think I'm in the brigade of youth, and I am potentially a youth. I mentioned that we are entitled, and that is a problem that we are experiencing. There could be opportunities, but then we want the opportunities to be given to us. to be fed to us. We don't really want to roll up our sleeves and get work done. That is a problem that we really have to have a conversation about. But then again, I ask myself, from where the president is coming from, is there congruence on what he campaigned on and the deliverables that we have? Yes, there's a congruence. It's not 100%, but it is work in process. Let us stop looking at Kenya as a destination. Kenya is a work in process. Something is going on. Let's appreciate the work that is going on as we await for the end process that we are looking at. The president is working, there's something that is going on, and we should also just be united as youths and see the greater objective where Kenya should be, so that we see how we are fitting in. Complaining and then doing nothing about it is not going to help.
Okay. Mark, closing remarks.
Yes, so for me, Trevor, I'll be a bit political on my ending remarks, and my closing remarks will be sent to the opposition leaders, is that we are a bit worried as the UDA that we might not have a serious competition in 2027, and we are urging them that time is really going fast, and we are urging them to take time and really organize themselves. The gap as it stands now will be around 5 million, but so that we want them to exit with dignity, we can reduce it to 3 million. So we are urging them so that the young people who do not believe on our cause, such as my friend Marion, can find an alternative with them. We are urging them to start organizing themselves. But I will say this lastly, this could also be attributed to the lack of experience with handling a presidential election, because the last 3 cycles, the presidential candidate for the opposition has always been Raila Odinga. So I do understand where they're coming from too, but they can bridge this inexperience by also learning from us, so that we are also able to have some serious competition towards 2027.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jimmy.
Personally, being an aspirant for Kangundo North MC at 2027, I think it's about time. We have to stop carrying on the same narrative, and we disrupt the thinking pattern that has been there. And that goes even for all the SIGs, because you have to be in these spaces. So I have said that the political parties are just our political homes. But political homes can be as well renovated, because our homes as well, they are renovated. It's about time we change things. It's about time we jump into the space. So I'm calling upon the youths. We get to do this. Let's get register ourselves. Let's be ready, because of course we have our political parties as well, but you can as well go as independent candidate. There are open spaces. But let's stop this thing of fear. Let's jump into it. Let's get to do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brian.
Let me today be a pious. If there is something that the youths must always never lose, is hope. And I think we must have that hope, and we must remain firm in our values. And also for that, we must participate in all political processes. That is really very important for this country.
All right. Thank you all for making time this morning. Kipkorir Brian, UDA National Youth Affairs; Jimmy Mutua, Convener, Male Gender Champion; Marco Uko, Youth Coordinator, National Students Council of Kenya; Kimberly Marion, Youth and Gender Inclusion Advocate; and Beatrice Amondi, Youth Advocate as well. Thank you so much for speaking to us this morning and for having this conversation with us every Friday. We speak to the young people to find out what their thoughts are in terms of governance and everything in between there. Coming up next is Ben Su, and he has Roy T-Boy on the decks. It's Level Up Friday. Have a great weekend. Bye for now.